Before I formally introduce Jack, I just want to, I met Jack probably about 15 years ago. So obviously we were both in elementary school when we met. And he was speaking at a support group. And I was like, this guy is great. Like, I want him for every support group. I probably have annoyed, like to this point, I joke, it's a wonder if he sees me in Publix, he doesn't run in the other direction, because he is obviously in Tampa with me, but he is just incredible. I sent my parents to him. I just think so highly of him. Now I will read you his actual bio, but this is kind of how I know Jack. Oh, no, Jack says never mind. Okay. But thank you, Jack. Elder attorney extraordinaire, and we're grateful you're here today.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm glad I have some time with you guys. I've included in my materials enough to spend 3 hours with you. I will not, but I'm going to keep the pace going pretty fast, because some of this stuff applies and some of this stuff doesn't apply. But for the most part, I want to be able to cover it in a way that you don't have to take notes, but I provided the notes you needed. To do that, I had to provide a lot of notes you don't need. So for that, I apologize. I also included information that is incomplete. It's incomplete because I didn't necessarily give answers in here, because as an attorney, giving answers sometimes are problematic because they may not be the right answer for you, or may not be a complete answer. Now we're going to go over some answers and we're going to go over what's available. But the key thing, since we were dealing with so many different geographic locations, and I'm only licensed to practice law in Florida, I really wanted to hit some basic themes and really give some valuable information. No matter where you are, you would be helpful. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is, who am I? Well, I started practicing elder law back in 1991, and focusing on it because I was interested in healthcare law. And the only way I could really practice healthcare law, because I didn't work at a big firm, was helping people going through the process. And at that time, I had the privilege to serve the greatest generation, the ones that went through World War II, and their children who were trying to figure out how to care for them. And I told them I didn't know what I was doing, but I'd give it a good shot. And they told me, well, we don't know what we're doing either, and we'll let you have a shot at it. So I was very grateful for the opportunity. And from them, I've learned quite a bit, and learned over the last 31 years quite a bit about coverage. And the first thing I want to say is you have to have your legal affairs in order. And that's if you're young or old. And it's the boring things people don't tend to do. And it's hard when you don't have someone you can trust and rely on. And that's really when you know you have an issue. And that's when you have to reach out and start building those liaisons, those supportive areas. And so when you look at this, the first thing that you're really going to look at is a power of attorney, a durable power of attorney that allows someone else to act for you. That's going to allow someone to write checks, pay bills, deal with your resources, your assets, deal with your income.
Do you want to share your screen, by the way, right now?
Sure.
Thanks.
I get all tangled up, forget about things. There we go.
Perfect, thanks.
So, okay, so you should be able to see this now. So as you, hold on one second. Oh, where'd you go?
We're on the first page.
Yeah, are you seeing it now?
Yeah.
Is it moving?
We got it. Yeah, we've got the March 29th at the top. Yep.
Yep. Okay, good. All right. So the first thing you're going to be looking for is the will. I mean, the power of attorney. The power of attorney is so important because it provides someone else to be able to act for you. The next thing to look at is the healthcare surrogate. And everyone's going to get a copy of this paperwork in your chat in just a few minutes. So you're not going to have to worry about taking notes, taking pictures of the screen. These things are going to come to you, so you're going to be able to have this. Now, use at your own risk, because this is not the practice of law, but generally speaking, healthcare proxy and a healthcare surrogate, these things are very, very important because they allow someone else to make a healthcare decision for you. A healthcare decision is very helpful if you can't speak for yourself. And having someone there to do that with the power of attorney and a healthcare surrogate or a proxy are going to result in avoiding a guardianship, which is expensive. It's like a living probate. And everybody's heard how they want to avoid probate. And then finally, you need to have a living will so people understand what your wishes are and how you wish to have treatment at the end of your life. And we're going to touch on hospice and how hospice provides treatments and some changes under how they can get paid to deliver care in your home in a very substantial way, a big change over the last 3 years. And then finally, a HIPAA release. A HIPAA release is very important. Believe it or not, your healthcare surrogate can be valid enough for a HIPAA release. Your power of attorney could be valid enough for a HIPAA release. But having a HIPAA release seems to solve the problem when other people are saying, I need your HIPAA release. So when they ask for it, you have something that says HIPAA release, they are very happy to have a HIPAA release. So it tends to make people more happy when they get the document they're looking for. So when you understand how to pay for care, that is very, very helpful because many, many people are worried about how they're going to pay for care and where that care is going to be. To do that, you have to understand what is your health insurance. And it seems like a really simple thing. And, you know, maybe some TV star was encouraging you to get this Medicare Advantage plan, or maybe they had a nice dinner at the local buffet and they were going to tell you all the benefits of this particular plan versus that one. Or maybe your employer has this phenomenal plan that you still have and it offers you everything that you ever wanted under the planet. All of these things may be phenomenal, but they may not be for your particular needs at the time you need it, particularly when you need custodial care at home, custodial care in assisted living, or custodial care in a nursing home. Now, what is meant by the term custodial care, the way I'm using it? That's something that people are not traditionally using the term as medical, something that doesn't require the skilled services of a nurse. Now, having said that, I think it's cruel that they've defined medical care in that way. I think custodial care has a lot of components that are very much medical care. But when you look at how Medicare defines care and how medicine defines care, the only place you can get custodial care consistently paid for if you don't have long-term care insurance is going to be Medicaid. And we'll touch on Medicaid towards the end. So you need to know your rights. You need to have to understand your rights. And as an attorney, we're telling people what their rights are. Going to an elder care attorney can help you understand what your rights are and how to best advocate for your rights. A good elder care attorney will teach you how to advocate for yourself. You will not be having them fish for you, but you will be able, and your caregivers will be able to fish for themselves, meaning you'll be able to advocate for yourself to get what you need, when you need it, and how you need it. Yes, your results will vary, just like the gas mileage varies when you buy a car, because your circumstances are going to be different than others. But with the right information and understanding what they're required to do, documenting the file correctly is a big, big help. So when you're looking at how to move forward and what you can do, you're going to want quality care. You're going to want to participate in your decisions. You're going to want to be able to refuse the treatment you don't want, get second opinions. You want to have privacy and confidentiality. You want to be able to have filing complaints. And more importantly, you want to seek legal rights if your legal recourse if your rights are violated. But what's not mentioned here is what you really want to focus on for advocacy for your rights is something called social determinants of care. And I'm not sure if Eden and Kelly go through this or have people talk about this, but it's one of the things that the government is starting to track. The government is tracking social determinants of care through every healthcare point you go through. And they are tracking not only what's going on in your healthcare, but those things that impact your healthcare. And so documenting your particular caregiver's health, looking at caregiver fatigue, documenting that is now part of, these sort of factors are now part of what's called an ICD-10 billing code that healthcare can in fact change. And so it's a phenomenal benefit to many of these elders and those that are in need of care to document this file, because it helps you advocate for care, because you're able to have the medical information you need in the chart when they are reviewing the chart for approval. So you're going to be looking also at considering the long-term care options and how you're going to make decisions and where you're going to get care and what services are there, and whether you're going to get care at home, assisted living or nursing home, when to bring in hospice, and which government benefits are really going to be the ones that you layer in, and are they the right benefits for you at the right time? Many times people delay too long getting the right benefits, and that's unfortunate because it could be a huge help to them to get the benefits they need. One of the
real
ones,
quick, can you scroll up? Can you scroll down a little bit so that we can follow you?
so right now, I had just said, I just finished dealing with rights, and now I'm talking about long-term care options. And now I'm
Scroll
getting
down to where that is on the page though, because we're still looking at the first page.
yes, I understand what's going
Okay,
on now.
thanks.
What I thought I was looking at, I'm not looking at the right document. I apologize. Thought it'd be easier than this. 1 second, please. I have 2 of these up.
Somebody say about that you were talking about exactly what they said in relationship to our rights. Like, we need to know what we want and need as far as like our rights go.
Yeah, that's true. Let me get to the chat. Can you see me move now or no?
No,
Is it-
we're still on the first page.
All right, let me close this. Is now moving?
Now we're moving.
All right, I see
Now we're
what
moving.
happened. You know what happens when you work all day, you have a cluttered desktop. So I had more than one copy of this PDF open. Okay.
There we go. Yep. Now you're scrolling. Thank you.
Oh, thanks for stopping me. So as we look at it, the first thing I want to talk about is we're gonna touch really on Medicare, Medicaid, veterans benefits, and how to access it. SSDI and SSI work I'm not really going to touch on too much, but understanding how to access it. I'm going to start with the VA benefits. I'm going to go quickly through that because we had enough people that were veterans that it's helpful for them to know this. If you're a veteran or a survivor of a veteran, there are significant benefits out there that can help if you have to receive care at home. I am taking the approach in this presentation that you want to stay at home, you want to remain at home, and you want to layer services from whatever source you get to stay at home. And if you're going to stay at home and you do this, you want to do it in a way that's affordable and doesn't cost you an arm and 2 legs. And so how do you go about doing that? Well, you have to look at other people to help subsidize that care for your care, because someone has to get paid, and how are they going to do that? So when we look at this and we look at how this can be done, it gets a little confusing. One benefit out there is from the VA, and it's a low-income pension with aid and attendance. And my math might be a little bit wrong on the middle one, but it shows that if you're married, you can get up to $26.42 for a veteran and their spouse. For a surviving spouse, you can get $17.60. And for a single veteran, you can get $22.29. And you need to have assets less than $150,000. If you end up asking the veteran, the VA, for a pension, the reason I call it a low income pension is most people have income. So therefore, they're not going to be eligible for that benefit. They're going to say when they call up, you're not eligible for that benefit. You have too much income. That's before they even talk about what the assets are. But if you're spending all of your household income, your husband and your wife's, or just your income on care, it's as if you had no income. For every dollar you spend on income, they reduce, on care, they reduce your income by $1. So if you spend all your income on care, you have no income. Therefore, you have low income. And as a result, you could be eligible, depending on your assets, for a low income pension, as I call it. And that's very helpful for the veteran or the survivors of the veteran. But when we look at the veterans, they're able to access VA healthcare. And many of our veterans with Parkinson's have access, but they're not always going in and being informed of all the services they can get from the VA. And there are many services that can be very helpful to them at the VA. One of the biggest ones that I find that have been giving great service to my clients that are veterans is home-based primary care. The home-based primary care program is the doorway of getting all the other services that you would want to stay at home. It is the first part of the VA hospital back in 1972 that started doing outpatient. Now the VA is entirely a VA healthcare system that predominantly serves people on the outside of the grounds, not on their inside of the grounds. And so it really is, it really can be helpful. Now, when they look at situations and the spouse who's the veteran is healthy, in those situations, you are able to get some caregiver support perhaps, but the challenge that you will have is it has to be household expenses for care have to be what pushes the benefits. And your VA healthcare is not going to be helpful for the spouse that's well. And if you're ill and you have so I'm going back to the healthcare, we're going to talk about expenses. So I'm not going to answer these questions on the healthcare coming up in the chat right this second, because we're going to answer them later. So when you go to the VA healthcare, it's really a full range of preventive outpatient, inpatient, home-based care. Your prescriptions can all be covered. And they also have state veterans homes that are often better than some of the nursing homes that are for profit. And if you have a service connection, 60%, 70%, you are really going to be beneficial going to a state veterans home if you need a nursing home, because it will be free to you. So it's absolutely free of cost if you have a service connection. So when you look at the copay rates and what the copay rates are for the expenses, they don't look at what your assets are. They look at what your income is. They did away with the asset test for VA healthcare a long time ago. Instead, they look at what your income is. And again, depending on what you spend on care, you could have no income. If you're getting a VA pension, you're going to be able to have no charges. But there's some other exceptions, even if you have high income. So for the first 22 days, there's no out-of-pocket cost for the geriatric and extended care copay rates. After the 21st day, you start to pay. And so if you're there, you're at $97 a day for inpatient care. And if you're at an outpatient care, you're at $15 a day. And if you're in domiciliary, it's $15 a day. So they're required to determine a financial assessment if you are receiving services at the VA. And under law, they're required to at least request that. But they're going to provide services at no cost for veterans who can't afford to pay for their own care. And that's going to be anyone who's getting that low income pension with aid and attendance. And also anyone who has a catastrophic medical condition, and we're going to define that in a minute. And anyone who has a disability rating of 50% or higher is also considered, they're not going to request a copayment. And for conditions that are rated as service connected, I like to, and you may not be able to do it in your state in all circumstances, but I like blending the Medicaid managed care and the VA long-term care as a safety net to provide home and community-based care. I'm finding, though, that some of the programs I'm going to talk about prevent you from doing that. You can still do that if you're enrolled in just the VA healthcare system and not some of the programs I'm going to talk about. The nursing homes that needed funding is also in place with the state veterans homes. So they can fund nursing homes in the community through contracts as well from the Veterans Health Administration. I defined for you what is considered catastrophically disabled. Why? So you can see that a lot of people are going to be considered catastrophically disabled. And the reason it's helpful to be declared catastrophically disabled is you get a priority for service if you're not admitted into the VA healthcare system and you're eligible to be admitted, and you get no copays if you're in need of services. So it's very helpful. So I briefly describe home-based primary care. I go through and talk about the comprehensive assistance for family caregivers offered to family members of veterans. Through this program, you can get 60 hours of care a month, which is phenomenal. That can be very helpful and it's coordinated. They also have a program called medical foster care homes, which are not ALFs, but very small private homes that provide supportive care to veterans in a non-institutional setting. And by doing that, they have their own room, they have their own bathroom, they're inspected by the VA. VA healthcare provides all the care. The proverbial 3 hots and a cot are provided for by the foster care home. And so they have a lot of requirements, a lot of inspections, a lot of training, but it's a very modest approach to getting care, but it's in the home and in the community, and it works well. Veteran-directed care. This is a self-directed program, and anytime you see the term self-directed, that's a great thing. That means you're getting the funds to do it yourself, and you can layer that with other programs at times. Veteran self-directed will bring you another $2,500 into the house. Now you can use that with the VA low-income pension or the service-connected compensation. So you can have both of these funds coming in to help pay for care at home. You know, the challenge truly is, though, are you better off doing that or going forward with Medicaid? One way you're spending your own money, the other way you might be spending your own money, but you might be able to get more services and more flexibility. The way I see veteran-directed care being used locally, and this is being recorded, I'm not going to say it. I'm not always pleased with how they roll it out. Let's just put it that way. They seem to limit the VA's responsiveness, because if you take the veteran-directed care, you're going to give up the VA homemaker and home health aid program the way they do it locally. And the challenge is, it's really unfair that you have to make that decision. It's either this or that. But by making the decision, you're going to give up access to the VA home health aid program that you get if you're enrolled in VA healthcare. The problem is locally, we're having a hard time getting the home health aid. In the VA, local VA medical centers, they're more likely to encourage you to go forward with the veteran-directed care. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword. Again, I mentioned about the veterans nursing home being paid for and will be totally paid for. They also accept in Florida, if you're not a wartime veteran, you can still get services there, but they have a waiting list and they give priority to those that are wartime veterans. For those that have a service connection, I encourage you to go back if you're not at 100% and continue to reapply. You get higher benefits. because as you age, you become unemployable. And if you're unemployable, sometimes there's an availability to claim and get a higher rating. So also, if you have family members, such as a parent or a disabled child, there are ways to increase your disability payments as well. So when we look at special monthly compensation, if you are getting a disability and you're at 100%, most people aren't aware that you can get a compensation greater than the 100% rating. It's special monthly compensation. So if you're in a situation in which you meet some of the additional requirements, if you're housebound, bedridden, and need of aid and attendance, you can get an extra payment with special monthly compensation. If you're permanently bedridden, you also can get an additional enhancement or need help with the basic needs such as eating, dressing, and bathing. That also provides for an additional payment. One of the big things I wanted to mention is the availability of forcing the VA and any of the government funded care to take honor of the ADA and have you remain in the community. The VA has two ways that you can deal with that. The first is the VA Healthcare Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. Section 504, as amended, prohibits discrimination on disability in any program or activity conducted by federal agency. This requirement is to ensure accessibility to VA facilities, programs, activities, services, and benefits to public, including veterans, families, and beneficiaries. Merely because you're incapacitated and you're at home and unable to get there to get the services you need does not mean that they are not obligated to provide them to you. So the challenge that you have, is it's very difficult sometimes to get the services you need. They say it's not available. They also have an Office of Resolution Management, Diversity and Inclusion. A lot of people think that's dealing with a lot of things, but don't realize it's also dealing with care and the care that you're not getting because you're not getting it at home where you want to receive your care. So I'm going to skip over this. And the health equity also is another office where you can deal with it. We're going to get into Medicare home health and supplements in just a minute. A lot of you, most of you, almost all of you have Medicare. And when you're dealing with Medicare, it's very important to know that home health is not necessarily always delivering all the services they could or delivering on the doctor's orders in the way that they could be complete. So I go through and state directly what is required to get home health care and exactly what is necessary for that to continue. And so if you are in a situation that you are getting at least 1 hour's worth of services, believe it or not, they are under the rules, you should be eligible for significant hours of a home health aide to help you as well at home. We do not see that being offered, even though it's stated under the law. Mainly that's because of the way the home health companies are funded. They are funded on a single payment. And because they're funded on a single payment, it appears to me that the less services they offer, the more they are able to profit. But they are being measured under what's medically appropriate. A lot of people get terminated on their home health care rehab much quicker than they should because they're being told they're not progressing or it's no longer therapeutic. It's very important that these services can continue medically under the Medicare CMS guidelines to maintain your ability to use and to maintain your strength, and so that you do not lose function. Now, even if you have an illness that's going to cause you to perpetually continue to lose function, the goal should be that you don't lose function and you need to maintain the function that you have and keep fighting to build and gain the more function and try to prevent the loss by getting stronger and compensating. But a lot of times that's not done. So making sure you follow up with your doctor, you and your doctor on the same page, and the doctor actually writes the need for the home health down to the number of days and hours, that could be very helpful. To me, the coverable home health services truly are not being properly billed, serviced, or ordered all the way across the board. So I touch on hospice care. This is in the last 3 or 4 years, it's been under huge changes, mainly in the reimbursement, because if you want healthcare to do something, provide funding, and they'll do it. Healthcare traditionally follows the money and provides care appropriately, and has done a decent job of doing so. If you look at routine home care, hospice is in fact being paid more, and we're starting to see more services as a result coming out of hospice for that. We're also seeing continuous home care really coming available, and it's really to maintain that individual. And we're seeing that it's up to 8 hours. It could be a minimum of 8 hours being provided. It can be split in 4 hour to 4 hours. Again, it can be very, very helpful. The respite care is outside of the home. It provides 5 days of consecutive care at a location. It's either a nursing home or a hospital. Oftentimes when needed, that could be a huge help. Talking about Medicaid. Medicaid is a state and federal partnership. And when we're looking at both of those organizations, the feds and the feds have a lot of rules, and you got to follow the rules in order to take the federal money. It says, is home health care and hospice rules different in each state? Under Medicare, no, that is not different. Under Medicaid, yes. They're very similar under Medicaid, but there's some distinct differences because each state does it a little differently. With regard to Medicare, the question is from home health care and hospice. When we're dealing with home health care, there really is a great resources, and that is a Center for Medicare Advocacy, the Center for Medicare Advocacy. And they have a great self-help toolkit that goes right down and tells you exactly what to do and how to get the services you need. They were an early advocate for that. I can drop the web page directly in the chat. Only take a second. And they would be an excellent group to have in the future. Well, I'm going to continue. There it is. Whenever I have a question and I am stuck and don't quite understand what is going on with a particular Medicare provision, I will always go and look there. Well, for whatever reason, I'm not able to paste, so I'll come back to that. So when we look at, you said, there's another question. How about palliative care separate from hospice? What are the guidelines so that individuals can activate earlier in their journey? Well, any healthcare provider should be able to provide palliative care separate and apart from hospice. The difference is, I'm not sure that you're going to get the funding sources that I had referred to. I believe those are hospice specific funding sources. And so that's the kink in the funding. I'm trying to find funds to pay for care, and under which Medicaid is one of the largest places for us to find funds to pay for care. But you have to remember that Medicaid is not a gift, it's a loan, and they're going to want to get paid back from what you have. So a good elder care attorney can tell you how to limit or prevent those payback provisions and be attentive to that. But in some situations, you can't avoid a payback. But we're going to have to go through and talk about it. Medicaid is the payer of last resort. If the services can be provided by any other resource, they're going to want to do that. Traditional Medicare, Medicare Advantage, Part C, supplemental insurance, workers' comp. If you have a work comp claim, those old work comp claims sometimes can be a great source of funding for your long-term care because they're still on the hook for care, even in the later years, depending on your state's workers' comp law. If you have long-term care insurance, that's great. The VA comes in and it's helpful. And then you have your DSMPs, which is if you're on certain Medicaid programs, you can get a DSMP, which is very helpful. That's a Medicare Advantage plan. That's very helpful for those who are eligible for Medicaid and Medicare. So when we look at Florida's approach, and I can only speak to Florida's approach, it's all I know, and we're looking at long-term care, the state of Florida has gone to a managed care approach, and most states have. In a managed care approach, they really are mandating that all the individuals who are in need of long-term care go through a process. And in Florida, we have two branches. One is nursing home care or institutional care, which is referred to as ICP Medicaid. ICP Medicaid is institutional care program, and the institutional care program is nursing home Medicaid. The second program is home and community-based program Medicaid. And that's also a great program, but that gives care at assisted livings with a small stipend, as well as care in the home. Under the provisions under long-term care at home with the Medicaid program, under home and community-based services, you literally can get round-the-clock care if you know how to advocate. You can get up to 50 hours a week or more if you document and advocate correctly. It all comes down to the care plan and being able to advocate correctly under that care plan, documenting it with the social determinants of health, being able to provide third-party medical documentation that it's not for the convenience of a caregiver, but it is medically necessary to have the support that you need. But in Florida, we have found that the transfer of this managed care has encouraged more and more people, because the state wishes to encourage it, to move from the nursing homes and into the community. Has this saved the state of Florida money? Maybe, maybe not. Why? If we keep increasing the population of people who are outside of a nursing home that are on these programs, then we really have increased our Medicaid budget. Right now, by having these waivers, we're very fortunate because we're increasing the number of people who can get services at home, services at assisted living, and not in a nursing home. We've also capped the number of nursing home beds that are being built. But if we limited our nursing home beds to only those beds that were built and not have enough beds, the state would have capped their expense as well. So by constantly having these beds available and having people go out of the nursing home that still are a nursing home level, we're seeing that the budget for care under Medicaid is continually rising. So we may have more and more people eligible for Medicaid, having the opportunity to be on Medicaid, getting some services, but much like a river, at the end of the river, there's a wide delta where you don't have as much of the services. That's my biggest fear. At the end of the day, when we have more and more people eligible, will we have enough services available to meet the need? But when we look at the long-term care program and how it's done, the goal of the care manager that is assigned to the individual that's on Medicaid is to keep them in the community, to keep them as affordably as possible in the community so that they're not accessing more expensive resources. To be eligible for Medicaid in Florida is a three-part test. You got to meet the level of care. In the community, it's a little bit different, but in a nursing home, it's basically you have to be unable to, you have to be medically in need of the services you're applying for. And the income currently, it was asked earlier, is $2,742. So if you have $2,742 in income or more, you're not going to be eligible for Medicaid. Now, there are two types of trust you can use, and elder care attorneys can do that, but that's not true in every state. Some states are not income cap states like Florida, and so you'll have to check on your particular state. In the countable resource area, if you're single, you can have no more than $2,000 when you apply. And what they count and what they don't count varies slightly by state and how they do that. But in Florida, it doesn't count the house, it doesn't count your IRAs if they're in monthly distribution or retirement accounts. It doesn't count also your car, your home. And in Florida, your home is protected against lien after you pass, as long as you leave it to your family. If you're married, you can't have more than $148,400 in assets outside of those things that we mentioned. And this would have to be in the spouse's name that's not in the need of care. So when we start to look at what you have, where it is, and what's available, ultimately, Medicaid can be a very important resource for you because it really is going to address quite a bit of your need when it comes to custodial care. And what you're going to need and how you're going to get there, you really have to compare what it is in your state. I can tell you that many people have moved to Florida and have become Florida residents. And as a Florida resident, get assistance under the Florida laws because they're more generous than Florida. But by getting eligible for Medicaid and wanting to stay in the community, no matter what state you're in, there is a decision by the Supreme Court under Olmstead that really was preventing people from being forced to go into nursing homes and being able to stay in the community through home and community-based services. And as a result of going through the home and community-based services, they're able to stay in more of a consumer-based solution and being in their community. And finally, there's an integration requirement both under the 504 Rehabilitation Act, and CMS is also requiring it that if they're getting federal dollars, they got to do stuff in a way that they're not segregating people into institutions and allowing them to live independently in the community. So oftentimes people are worried. Oftentimes people are worried about how they're going to support their spouse if they're in need of care. There is a way under Medicaid, and even if you're in the community, they have changed the law. When you talk about community spouse, it used to be that somebody was in a nursing home and someone was in the community, the spouse was in the community. Now, when we're referring to community, we're talking about the spouse that's not on benefits is how you define it. Because even with home and community-based services at home, in Florida and any other state, they changed the law federally. So no matter where you are, you'll be considered a community spouse if you're not on benefits. Therefore, you're able to have all the spousal asset and income protections that the government allows you to have, even if your spouse is not in a nursing home, but is in an assisted living or at home receiving care. So in Florida, they deal with the community spouse income allowance, which is a federal mandated formula on how they're going to calculate what you're able to shift over. In many situations, once you're done with the calculation, it's not enough money to support the spouse. And so as you go through and you need that, there's a better way to go about it. And this is a federal answer because the federal statute says if there's a court order for support against the institutionalized spouse for monthly support for the community spouse monthly income allowance cannot be less than the amount ordered. So it's possible without getting divorced, particularly in Florida, you can get a court order for support unconnected with divorce and actually transfer the monthly income to the well spouse on a monthly basis. And attorneys can do that. So I'm coming up now on about 3:50. I wanted to leave a few minutes to answer any questions as they came up and try to be responsive. I hope this has been somewhat helpful. It was pretty all over the place, but I wanted to try to give you at least a flavor of the sort of things you might hear and talk about if you went to an elder care attorney. So I have some questions here, and Eden, feel free to.
Let me go through a couple real quick. Someone asked, if a person is on Medicare with a supplement plan but runs out of money due to care, like what happens? Can that person go on Medicaid, and what are the rules for that?
Well, I would hope they would get advice before they run out of money. Mainly because there are types of answers that can put the limited funds into special trust, or the income that's too high into a special trust in Florida, so that you're able to become eligible for some of the programs like these DSMPs. You hear a lot, if you just Google DSMP, you'll see the duly eligible plans are some pretty interesting plans. They could be very helpful. And they could be very helpful to keep people from going broke, because you end up paying none of your copays, none of your deductibles under Medicare. They end up getting money to help with food, and end up getting to go to any of their Medicare doctors. So even though it's an Advantage plan, they get some pretty decent benefits because of the expanded services, and it's been very helpful. So, you know, the goal with most of this stuff is, this is a starting point, and really I've left a lot of stuff out. The challenge is, before you run out of money, while you have money, while you have abilities, before you're too fatigued, start working with someone who can give good advice. And it's worth, I think, now I have a vested interest in this answer. I think it's worth working with an attorney versus working with some other professional that you might pay, because the attorney is going to be representing your interest and no one else's if they're doing it correctly. So I tried to be very thorough. I welcome any feedback. If you have any other detailed questions, if you see a mistake on any of my numbers, please let me know. I'm human, I can make mistakes. If you have any other information you think should be in here that I didn't mention, please let me know as well, because I'd love to include it in the next time I might do something to be helpful. I know that I have, yes, other rules have, yeah, I've seen some great questions here. You know, in other words, every state has a different rule on Medicaid and how they deal with things. There is a 5-year look back, but how they look at that can all be answered by an elder law attorney. So there's a National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys. There's another, you can also go to avvo.com, which is a lawyer review site. Lawyers.com is a lawyer's review site. Google, you look at these lawyer reviews, there are a lot of different lawyers out there, and there are different types of lawyers. But if you pick one that's been out there for a while, they'll have some reviews and some documents, and people will have heard of them. And don't be too discouraged if you see some bad things about them too, because anyone who's been out in the business long enough has a few knuckleheads come through.
You always do talk though about you, like, for example, you give a free hour consult. Is that something you would like most go to somebody who would at least listen to you for an hour to see what they can do for you?
Yeah, generally, I like not to charge, because I may not want to really deal with the person, and it's a way I can talk to them and not have to do anything. I don't feel bad. But the short answer is, a lot of people get taken up with a lot of time. A lot of lawyers get taken up with time. It's not unfair to charge a consultation charge, because all they have is their time. I'm pretty generous with my time, because for the most part, I don't have an issue. If people come in, they tend to hire me by the end of the day. But not everyone has that sort of rapport. But you also have to address their concerns. Let's see, obviously there's a myriad of agent. I like that. Are there no system of navigators? There's tons of navigators out there. There's so many people you can, get advice from, and some of them are quite good. Just because you went to a lawyer doesn't mean you'll get great advice. I hope you do, but so I don't know. It's sort of the Wild West, and everybody is a mixture of their experiences. So I don't know. Most of them, those that are ones you would want to go to, I would go on the internet and look around, and you can pretty much see those people who have been around for a while and doing what they're doing. And yes, I do.
Oh, sorry. I was saying we did also get a question if you could do respite care, but then also if you could just address, somebody asked if you do Zoom.
Yeah, I handled Zoom consultations for the state of Florida. We do that, and the first hour is free. I do that to anyone. Look, you listen to me for an hour, I'll listen to you. I hope you have found it helpful. Yes, I said check with the attorney. They require $18,000. Is that average? Yeah, I'm expensive. I do reduce my fee based on someone's resources, but you're going to pay now somewhere around $10,000 to $15,000 by the time you're done. There's a lot of work involved if you do it right and you're thorough. Frankly, if we did it on an hourly basis, no one would hire us because it's just too expensive. There's so much work tied up in processing a file, because when you come to meet with us, you don't know what you have. You don't know where it is. You don't know how much you have. You really don't know the values of the things you have. And at the same time, you want an answer right now that's correct, complete, and thorough. I can't do that. It's going to take time to be able to have the right documents, have it complete, know exactly what's going on with your benefits, know exactly what's going on with your discharge. And do you have the right paperwork with your VA? Do you have the right stuff? And then we have to get the right information from your employer, depending on what's going on. And there's all these variables. And a lot of times when I say, well, I don't know, it depends how much time I put in, people just turn off. And so either they make a decision based on the value to them of that information, and that's really what's doing that. With regard to the fees not being affordable, if you're facing a large expense for that care, and you're going to have to pay for the care, and I can make that expense go away, I do think there's value there. In order to be helpful, we do a lot of work that's pro bono. We do a lot of work that we don't charge for, and we turn it around pretty quickly. The challenge that I've seen is those that are truly not wealthy and don't have resources, the system takes care of. You're able to get into the system much quicker. It's those that are being told you have too much income, you have too much money, or you're just not quite there yet. Those are the ones that don't have the money and need help. And again, as you know, there's a lid for every pot, you know, the expression goes. There's an attorney for every person, meaning that you'll find the right attorney at the right price for you, if that's what you're looking for. And so there's a lot of different questions out there. I can't answer them all. I've been out on my own since 1991. I have a staff attorney. You'll find elder care attorneys or elder law attorneys go anything from small solos, which is not unusual, to large staffs of 3 or 4 attorneys and 20 or 30 staff members. 6 one, half dozen the other.
You also talk about respite care. Somebody had asked about that earlier.
Yep. There are many services available for respite, and there's many services available for respite care. The respite care that is available, that you will find from the VA, can be quite extensive. They've gone from what used to be just, you know, a week or 2 down to the 6 hours a month, not 60 hours a month that we were talking about. If you're not a veteran, if you're looking at the expense of respite care, many ALFs will do it as on a monthly basis for a respite as well, or a weekly basis, or a fractional basis. You should always seek out your area agency on aging, and they also have resources. So let's talk about, for those that want other navigators going through, I'm going to wrap up this way, for low cost or no cost solutions, so that they have phenomenal choices. Everyone has in their community an area agency on aging. In Florida area, the Aging, Disability and Resource Center. You can reach out and call them, and they are able to navigate you to the appropriate resources to do so. One of the areas that they fund is they fund legal services, and this is nationally. And those legal services are going to be able to offer certain rights under them. Now, you have to fall under certain provisions, and there's some income and asset issues, but most people will find by the time you're done with it, you're not going to get the right person to help you, because you either have too much income or too much assets, and you'll go around in circles. So at the end of the day, in order to get someone like us, we'll be glad to be helpful, but there's a lot of people that are helped through the area agencies on aging, the Aging and Disability Resource Centers. The VA has tons of people who are able to help through the Veteran Service Officers that are no cost. And anytime you try to get VA benefits, particularly pension benefits, anyone who wants to charge anything for that, it shouldn't be charging you. That's all should be free unless you're doing an appeal. The biggest mistake some people make is they feel that they have to pay someone to do an application for pension, and that should be free. The advice and everything doing with that, anything I do with pension, I give free of charge. I don't charge anything for the pension stuff I talk about. So when we talk about, what's available, there are tons of people out there. At the hospital level, if you're in the hospital, at the discharge planners often have that information. If you call in and you request services, or if you're currently on Medicaid, the case manager there can be helpful as to other services. And many of the counties also have funding for services as well. So while you look at this now, this really all these threads for all these different services and phenomenal things that are out there, it's very hard to navigate. And so, I've spent 31 years trying to figure it out. And I still don't feel that I have things I need to learn on a regular basis. And so I find it challenging for anybody to feel like they have all the answers. And I assure you, I don't. But I'm here to help if people want it. And I thank you for the opportunity. And as I said, there's a lid for every pot. You'll find the person who you have confidence in to give you advice, but there's many ways you can learn. And a lot of this stuff, almost all of this stuff, is all on the internet. So you really can pull up this information and truly do that. With regard to really navigating, if you're in a bind, if you call your congressman, they usually have a constituent aid person who's able to be helpful as well. And they will be very helpful. All right, I think that's pretty much it. I think I've gone a few minutes over, but Eden, I hope I gave you what you were asking for.
Thank you. We also did put, as always, we encourage you to save your chat. We put several links in the chat. So if your chat is open, if you go down to the 3 little dots on the bottom, a little more will click on and you can save your chat. Jack has graciously agreed to share what he did. So in addition to the program being available, the PDF will be available as well if you didn't get it while we put it in the chat before. Jack, thank you so much. I'm so grateful for your time and just you coming and sharing your knowledge. You said I might not have all the answers, but I can certainly bet you're better off than a lot of us as far as what you do know. So thank you. Thank you. As always, we have our tradition at PMD, our wave of gratitude. And thank you to everybody for joining us. But Jack, it's always great to see you.
Always good to see you, and take care. Bye-bye.